Welcome to the Public Housing Repositioning Post-Closing How-To video series. The goals of the video series are to explain and discuss common issues and activities that occur post-repositioning, help PHAs and project owners understand their asset management and reporting responsibilities in the project-based voucher (PBV) program following repositioning actions leading to PBVs. For example, a RAD conversion. Each video in the series provides quick guidance on a specific topic. What happens in the first full year? This video covers what PHAs should expect with respect to funding in the first full year after a public housing property converts under RAD Component 1 from public housing to PBV. Please note that this does not apply to non-RAD project-based vouchers that are used in a RAD Section 18 blend. You will learn about the importance of completing and submitting a survey that is distributed by HUD in August or September during the project's first full year of PBV HCV funding. To put this into context, we will start with the basics of what happens during the year of conversion, then review what happens in the first full year after conversion, and wrap up with what to expect in the second full year and years following. For the purposes of this training, year refers to calendar year. Year of conversion. The year of conversion is defined as the balance of the months remaining in the calendar year following the effective date of the RAD-HAP contract. For example, if the RAD-HAP contract is signed on July 1, the year of conversion includes the 6 months beginning July through December. During this time frame, the project continues to be supported by the Public Housing Operating and Capital Funds and Voucher Management System, VMS, reporting is not required. The PHA does not receive administrative fee payments yet. However, please note that the Family Report, Form HUD 50058/Form HUD 50058 MTW, is required during this time frame. When the property is in the RAD conversion process, you will complete and submit the initial year funding tool. This Excel-based tool is used so that PHAs and project owners can calculate the amount of public housing subsidy, in addition to tenant rents, that would be available to a covered project during the initial year. PHAs should refer to the initial year funding tool for information related to funding in the year of conversion. PHAs should contact the project's assigned RAD closing coordinator with any questions about the information presented in the tool. First full year. For most RAD PBV conversions, projects are funded from the HCV accounts in the first full year following the year of conversion, in accordance with the RAD-HAP contract rents. HUD places the new funds on a Voucher Annual Contributions Contract, ACC, VMS reporting begins, and HUD starts to provide the administrative fee payments to the PHA. Second full year. In the second full year, and in each succeeding year, funding is renewed through the normal HCV re-benchmarking process. This process takes into account the prior year HAP expenses that are reported in VMS. First full year funding. Now that we've covered the basics of what happens in the year of conversion, first full year and second full year, we're going to focus the remainder of this video on the first full year. Remember, funding from the HCV accounts occurs in the first full year after conversion, not at conversion. Funding for each RAD project is an estimate based on how the project was funded when it was public housing, before moving into the HCV program. Funding is provided to PHAs in 2 batches. The first batch of funding provided through the HCV program should reach PHAs in time for the January 1 HAP payment. This means the first batch of funds obligated for a given project could cover up to 6 months of funding. In August or September, PHAs will receive an email from HUD that includes a survey for each project that is in its first full year of funding. First full year funding, the survey. The purpose of the survey is to determine the project's funding needs by comparing the funding the PHA received for the property to its actual need. HUD wants to know if you received enough funding or if adjustments need to be made to right-size the funding. The Excel-based survey is the place where you share with HUD what your actual funding needs are for the project. Here are a few of the basics about the survey. Surveys are only provided for projects that have converted from the Public Housing Program to the HCV program, i.e. RAD Component 1, and are in their first full year of funding in the HCV program. PHAs will receive one survey for each project in its first full year of funding. If the PHA has multiple projects that are in its first full year of funding, multiple surveys will be provided in a single email. Who must respond to the survey? All PHAs, MTW and non-MTW, are encouraged to submit surveys if the project is underfunded. For non-MTW PHAs, if there are multiple projects in its first full year of funding, all surveys for projects in the first full year of funding must be completed and submitted to HUD. What should you do when you receive the survey? Review the letter that is emailed with the survey that contains instructions for where to send the completed survey and the deadline date for submission. Reach out to the HUD contact person provided in the letter if you have any questions. Complete the survey that is attached to the email and save it as an Excel file. What happens if you don't respond to the survey? If a PHA does not submit a survey, it risks having to use its existing voucher reserves to make up for any difference between the amount HUD provided the PHA and the actual costs of the RAD-HAP contract. Additionally, if PHAs do not submit the survey timely and the shortfall prevention team determines there is a shortfall, HUD may not be able to provide funding to cover the project's needs, as funding may be depleted in the RAD account. The survey. Next, we will walk through the Excel-based survey. This Excel-based survey is sent as an attachment to an email from the Financial Management Center, FMC. The survey includes instructions at the top of the Excel file, which is shaded green. Next, you will see summary information for the property that is populated by HUD, including the PHA name, PHA number, increment number, obligated budget authority, project name, RAD units. PHAs are requested to complete the yellow shaded fields as applicable. Cells that are not shaded yellow should not be manipulated, as this could cause errors when HUD uploads the information into its reconciliation files. The Excel file contains at minimum one worksheet. The first worksheet is called Enclosure and is where information regarding payments is entered. The second worksheet, if applicable to the property, is called MTW Augmentation and is only contained in the Excel file for MTW PHAs that have augmented the RAD rents. We will discuss this in more detail later in the video. The survey contains 3 sections, and we will walk through each section by walking through an example property that has converted and is in its first full year of PBV funding. 1. HAP section. First, start with the first 2 columns highlighted in yellow. This is the Housing Assistance Payments, or HAP section. Enter the count of leased units and the associated housing assistance payments, HAP, for those leased units for each month in the calendar year. In this example, of the 92 units that converted, 13 to 15 units were leased in the months of January through September. Because the full calendar year has not been completed by the time the survey was requested, the PHA is estimating leased units in the months of October through December. To the right of the entered lease units, PHAs are requested to populate the associated HAP for the leased units reported by month in column C of the Excel file. 2. RAP section. Next is the Rehab Assistance Payments, or RAP section. For more information on Rehab Assistance Payments, please find Rehab Assistance Payments Guide on the RAD Resource Desk. First, enter the number of units undergoing rehab or construction that are eligible for RAP within a given month. Second, enter the associated payments next to the RAP units. Refer to the project's RAD-HAP contract to see if the project is eligible for RAP and the per unit amount. In this example, of the 92 units that converted, 77 to 79 were undergoing rehab in the months of January through September. The PHA is estimating that 79 units will be undergoing rehab in October, but will decline to 56 and 46 units in the months of November and December. Because the PHA is eligible to receive RAP, the payment for units undergoing rehab is accounted for in column E of the Excel file. 3. Vacancy Section. Next is the Vacancy Section. First, enter the number of vacant units each month if applicable. Second, enter the associated vacancy payments next to the vacant units. Not all PHAs that have vacant units will have vacancy payments. Refer to the project's RAD/HAP contract to confirm if your project is eligible for vacancy payments. In this example, all 92 units are accounted for as being leased or undergoing rehab. Therefore, 0 is entered in both vacant units and vacant payments. 4. Summary Section. No information will need to be entered in the last 3 columns of the Excel table, Excel columns H, I, and J. The Excel formulas will auto-calculate the information presented in sum of units and actual estimate shortage. The sum of units column should neither exceed nor be less than the total number of RAD units within the project for each month within the year. If these conditions are not met, the cell will not highlight in green and an error message will display. The assigned monthly BA column is based on the amount of funding assigned, obligated for the project at the time the survey was created. The actual estimate shortage column adds the amounts from each payment column, HAP, RAP, vacancy payments, together, then subtracts the amount shown in the assigned monthly BA column. In this example, the PHA needed an additional $900 to $2,300 to cover the HAP and RAP expenses each month, totaling $20,514 in additional funding needed for the year for Hillside Homes. MTW Enhanced Rents. If applicable, go to the second worksheet called MTW Augmentation. If you are an MTW PHA that has exercised their MTW flexibilities per the RAD notice to augment the RAD rents for a given property. This worksheet provides the unaugmented rents by unit type, so that the augmented portion of rent is excluded from the survey. The augmented portion of contract rent is not funded from the HCV program, and therefore should not be included in the survey as HAP. This tab is provided to help you take out the enhanced rent amount. Saving the survey file and timeline for additional funds. After inputting the information, remember to save the file in the same extension it was received, .xls. Changing the extension could result in the PHA providing data uploading to HUD's reconciliation file incorrectly. Remember, if you have multiple RAD projects in their first full year of HCV funding, a separate survey will be provided for each project in its first year of funding in a given calendar year. There are a few things to keep in mind about the timing of the survey. Most of the information you enter will be based on actual leasing and HAP, RAP, vacancy payment amounts. However, by the time survey responses are due, there will be about 3 to 4 months left in the year. You will need to estimate the information for the remaining months in the year. You will receive a specific deadline date in the email from HUD. Submitting the survey by the deadline ensures that any additional funding you need gets to the PHA in time for December payments. Obligations made up to the time the PHA receives the survey will only cover estimates of the need through November. HUD will review the surveys and may reach out to PHAs with questions or concerns. There are 3 possible outcomes. 1. For PHAs whose survey responses were provided by the deadline date and the project demonstrates a need for additional funding, funding will be provided in time for December 1 payments. 2. The survey may demonstrate that your PHA does not need additional funding. In that case, you have the right amount of funds to make the December 1 payments already. 3. You may have received more funding than needed. In that case, HUD will initiate a process to recapture these funds. PHAs will receive a letter from their Financial Management Center financial analyst with details on the recapture and how to remit the funding back to HUD. Remember to keep an eye out for an email with the survey attached sometime in August or September during the first full year after your RAD conversion. Thank you for watching this video.